Hello friends, it's been a while, welcome to yet another Baldur's Gate 3 video. Today I want to talk to you about the future of Baldur's Gate 3, what we can expect to see in the future from Larian Studios. So we all know that Baldur's Gate 3 is a huge success, it's already won a ton of awards and is likely going to win even more at the Game Awards show. But I think there's something to be said about us getting more substantial updates in the form of additional content, be that new quests, feats, or even subclasses and areas to explore. Listen, I love Baldur's Gate 3, it's my game of the year in a year that is filled with amazing titles. I would even go as far as to say that it's one of the best games I've ever played, period. But I think there are points to be made about missing content. And we have even heard from Larian themselves that there was a lot of content they wanted to make that had to be cut before the game's release. By now we all know about the 17,000 endings meme, but let's be honest, even after all the patches and hotfixes Act 3 has received, it still ends up feeling somewhat lacking in comparison to the rest of the game. It's cool to see a send-off to so many characters, character arcs that are concluded, and many quest lines and plot lines are resolved, but it still doesn't quite hit the mark, nor does it stuck the landing quite the way Acts 1 and 2 do. Don't get me wrong, it's still amazing content, something that many games wish they would have, but it's like going from an 11 out of 10 to a solid 8 out of 10 near the tail end of the game. Now, one of the more obvious things we can expect to see is a so-called definitive edition of BG3, much like we got with Larian's previous works, Divinity Original Sin 1 and 2, though in the case of the first one it was called Enhanced Edition. It's basically a repackaging of the original game, but with some improvements like menu overhauls, bug fixes, and overall quality of life changes, a rebalancing of the game's combat systems, and an adjustment to the game's difficulty curve, all of that on top of some minor additions, like for example the Sir Laura DLC in the case of Divinity Original Sin 2, but also in the case of that same game we also saw some major story changes with almost 130,000 words being added and recorded, and a structural rework of the game's final act, which, as I'm told by some friends that actually played the game before the definitive edition, which is what I played, the final act was basically a couple of encounters and then you would be thrust into the final boss area. This definitive edition would be free to everyone that already owns the base game, so there's really no downside to us getting this later down the road. And I really do believe that we are likely to see this happen, as the devs have even spoken in their wishes to further work on improving BG3 past all the tinkering and bug fixes and whatnot. We have already seen some major quality of life improvements being added to the game, for example, in the form of the character customization mirror, which was added in pretty much the same way as a functionally equal mirror in Divinity Original Sin 2. On that note, I have recently replayed it and there were several quality of life upgrades that the team has added over the game's lifespan that would be fantastic to see come over to Baldur's Gate 3, like an overhaul of the inventory system and just having better ways to swap companions and alter their gear, both in and out of camp. Currently, if you wish to improve these systems in your own games, your only avenue is mods, which is fine but not ideal, as there is a large portion of the player base that doesn't play with mods, either because they don't want to or because they can't, especially seeing as the PlayStation version of BG3 has been quite successful. These are things that Larian had essentially already solved in their previous game, and frankly at first, I found it a bit disappointing to not see them implemented in Baldur's Gate 3, though they were probably a low priority given the game's huge scope, and again the devs have been doing a fantastic job by adding all of these fantastic quality of life features. So if we were to get something akin to that, I would be extremely happy with it. Now, as I was recording this, Larian put out a brand new patch that's actually quite big. Among many things, we're getting a new epilogue focused on giving our beloved characters better closure at the end of the story campaign, which is something that was very criticized about the game's ending. But more surprisingly, the devs have added a much requested feature, a brand new difficulty mode, something that many of us probably only expected to see in a future repackaging of the game. In fact, it's actually two new modes. Custom, where you can, of course, customize a bunch of settings to your liking, and Honor mode, a hardcore mode if you will, where you only have a single save file, so no saves coming. Permanent death for every single one of your companions, including your very own Tav. And that on top of having to deal with tougher enemies and stronger bosses which will now have new abilities and even legendary actions. This is a huge deal. This alone will make for a lot of people to start whole new playthroughs to try to see what is different and if they can beat a challenge like this. It's a fantastic update that will provide a second wind of sorts for players that may have stopped playing BG3 these many months after its release. Personally, I'm still a bit sad we don't get the Lone Wolf playthrough, but even so, I cannot wait to jump in and try out all of my perfected builds in Honor mode and see what kind of party compositions I can find to work best in there. I'm absolutely blown away that the developers have decided to include this much content in a single update, and I believe it speaks volumes in regards to the talent, skill and passion the good folks over at Larian Studios have, and as such I will not stop singing their praises. There's many rumors about the Zariel DLC being in the works, or something that was essentially cut content from the game, and you know, if you actually play through the game you see that there's many hints to you being actually able to explore the Inferno, but you don't really end up doing that besides Raphael's house and a couple of cutscenes. So being able to actually explore that area and have a huge questline dedicated to, of course, Will, Mazora and Karlach, I think that would be amazing. Especially with how much focus the other companions already get, like Lae'zel, Shadowheart and Astarion, I think it would be pretty cool to see that happen. And from what I've seen online, pretty much the entire fanbase is a Karlach fan, so we would love to see that happen. As for when we'll see something like this happen, it's hard to say, though we do have a few clues that might actually help determine a release period. So, Divinity Original Sin 2 originally released on September 14th of 2017, with the definitive edition releasing on August 21st of 2018. So we're talking about an 11-month period of development for the definitive edition to come out. Though I think that for Baldur's Gate 3, Larian would likely take longer to develop it, given how much more ambitious the game is compared to their previous titles. So having said all of that, is it all but confirmed that we'll be getting a definitive edition for BG3? No, not really. But if I were a betting man, I would place my money on Larian to see it come out within the next 12 months. In the meantime, we can expect more bug fixes and quality of life updates, and maybe even some more epilogues, though at a much slower pace, as things have slowed down quite a bit since the game's release. I also want to take this opportunity to briefly mention to everyone that is new to CRPGs and their first experience was BG3 to try out Larian's previous projects Divinity Original Sin 1 and 2, as they are fantastic games that, in my opinion, offer even more flavor in terms of customization and build variety, though they may not have those awesome cutscenes each time you enter dialogue, and the overall dialogue isn't as rich in my opinion. And from then on, of course, you can try even more CRPGs like Pathfinder, which are much more complicated. Now this leads me to the second point of this video, which is the future of this channel. I love Baldur's Gate 3 and have loads of plans for videos to make on it. You guys seem to really like the build perfected videos and I plan on continuing the series. I've got tons of spreadsheets prepared for those videos. Some of you that know me from Monster Hunter are probably aware that theory crafting and testing builds is always my favorite thing to do in pretty much every video game that I play. So it's just a matter of me getting the videos ready for you guys. But also many of you that have been watching my content for a while, both here and on my bigger channel, will not be surprised when I say that I will be covering Dragon's Dogma 2 and Monster Hunter 6 whenever those games release. In fact, I'll probably be making some Dragon's Dogma 1 and Monster Hunter World videos throughout 2024 in preparation for those titles. I'm so excited for these two. We haven't really seen anything from Monster Hunter 6, but I expect that to be a banger. And from what I've seen of Dragon's Dogma 2, I am so incredibly excited. It looks so good, such a big improvement over the original, which I already loved. So I'm going to be all over those games once they release, and even before then. We of course can't forget about the Elden Ring DLC, one of the most anticipated DLCs ever. It has yet to have a release date, but I really want to play and cover Elden Ring even before the DLC comes out. I have a lot to say about it, and I think I can make some really good videos on the game, and I think that you all will find them enjoyable. Maybe take the same approach with the perfected builds to that game, and of course Dragon's Dogma and Monster Hunter as well. I think if I put my mind to it, I can make some really good videos about it. Then there is Grand Blue Fantasy Relink, a game not many of you may have heard of, but it looks like a very flashy action RPG with a gameplay loop that is similar to Monster Hunter. And of course, it also includes a 4-player co-op. It looks very fun, and it's something I've had my eyes on for many years now. I'm not too sure about covering it on the channel with everything I want to do. It may just end up being a guilty pleasure of sorts that I play with my friends, but if you guys are interested in it, I can make some videos and maybe stream it at the very least. And lastly, there is Zenless Zone Zero, a very stylish and fast-paced action game, and the newest installment into the Hoyoverse Gacha Vortex. I actually already have a video in the works about this game. It may seem like a very different thing compared to what I cover on the channel, but I have been a fan of Hoyoverse games for a very long time. And all I can say for now about ZZZ is that it is insanely fun. Do let me know if you guys are interested in me making videos about this or any other game I've mentioned thus far. At the end of the day, I like video games just as much as the next guy. I don't just like RPGs exclusively, but I do want to make videos about games that you guys also enjoy. Your support means the world to me, and I wanted to take this opportunity to talk to you all on a more personal level, since I don't get the chance to do it very often. With that being said, thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to see you all next time.